Hello, hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is your girl Mitzi, and this is Mitzi. Let's think about it. Today, we are thinking about communication intelligence. That is a thinker, and luckily, I have Ash here who's going to help us think about this in a whole new way. So, thank you so much, Ash, for coming on to my show, sharing your time and your perspective. I am excited. So, when you hear those words, communication intelligence, what does that make you think about?
It makes me think about how could I, number one, of course, think about what I want to achieve out of a particular communication that I'm having, whether I'm speaking with somebody at work or somebody at home. Hopefully, I'm thinking consciously about what the outcome is. And sometimes that outcome is just coming across as someone who's listening to the other person.
Yeah, exactly. I think listening is a very big component when it comes to communication because somebody can talk and talk and talk, but if the other person is not listening, then you're having a better conversation with a wall than you do with an actual human being. So, what really makes your form of communication or anyone's form of communication valid compared to somebody else that just is just rambling on?
Well, a lot of what we will be sharing with the audience today is really as a result of my coaching other leaders within companies here in the US and globally in Europe as well as in Asia on how to communicate effectively with others. And to your point, I love what you said about listening because a lot of the time there is another conversation that is happening in everyone's head besides the conversation that we're having and that we could hear. And I think intelligent communicators are ones who can sense that there is something else underneath the surface. And
Yeah.
they're able to ask a question, a second question, a third question, just show curiosity and interest versus trying to get to the next thing. And I think the problem is a lot of the time we are so much focused on what the next thing is that we miss out on the conversation we're having.
Yeah, that is very valid because people really don't talk about that inner voice that's going on in our head and that inner conversation that's happening. And I'm glad that you touched tone on it because I think we really need to be more mindful, when we are when we're communicating with somebody else, because if we are being present in this moment like you and I are, but we are constantly being distracted about what's in our mind or what's going on around us or what's going outside of this room, it really does take away from the moment and the point of this conversation. And I also want to touch base on how you talked about curiosity. Oh, I love that because I think when you allow curiosity to be the driver in the communication, then you really are able to understand where the other person is coming from. You're able to see where they're going, and you're able to really know what your next question could be because it's just, oh, okay, now it's another curiosity, it's another light bulb that pops up. So how do you recommend other people to really allow their curiosity to develop?
I would very much encourage them to ask and say, if this conversation was going to be in service of the other person I'm talking to, what could I ask that will give them a sense that I really do care about, number one, listening to them, number two, understand what their perspective is. And that's a very key component because usually there are several of them in the room and there are several others outside the room. So it's very important for us to try to understand what their perspective is. And then we can also ask them the best outcome of this conversation, what could it be? So that at least we can get a sense of what they are looking for. Because sometimes, to your point, going back to listening, sometimes all they want in this conversation is to be heard. And then we can start to then look at what are the other aspects that we need to be thinking about. But unless we understand their perspective, understand where they're coming from, a lot of the time, again, we could be racing to the next thing instead of really digesting what's happening right now.
Yes, absolutely. And you always get to notice when people are racing because they don't even allow you to finish your thought. They just like, okay, I'm ready for the next question. Or, oh, this popped up. So it doesn't even allow everything that's being said to marinate and to really reflect because you don't know if somebody just spoke the words that you already were going to ask, so you don't have to ask those questions. So it really diminishes repetitiveness when you actually are listening attentively and actively listening and really being how do you say um there. I don't know, maybe that's the wrong word, but present, I guess that's the word that I'm looking for.
Yeah.
So what are some miscommunications about communication that people may not know of?
The interesting thing that we always say in response to this question is the fact that a lot of the time we think that if we said it, that means it landed and it was understood and that people are going to act on it. And that is a big myth because a lot of the time, as we are sending a piece of communication, the idea of it being received by the other side and it being understood is an open question. So we should really ask a few follow-up questions just to make sure that our explanation has crossed the bridge over to the other person and they can understand what we are explaining to them and also ask a question or two to see if that understanding and that perspective is aligning with what they want to see and what they also envision. Because a lot of the time there are conflicting points of view, and unless we uncover what those are, we could actually walk away from a conversation thinking, okay, Mitzi or Ash got it. They're going to do it. And then all of a sudden we get an email a day later saying, you know what? I don't really understand this and that, and I'm sorry that I did not say this when we were talking, but I would really love to get clarity on X, Y, and Z. And then all of a sudden, we've essentially have added 24 hours to the timeline.
Yes, yes. That is so true. Like we don't realize what actually has been received and what actually has been like understood. So I think just having that open communication and reiterating what's been said so that you can clarify. Like that's one thing that I do. I will reiterate as much as I can just to make sure that I got it because if I don't got it, then I'm one of those people that will be like, I need further clarification on this because I will not understand it. So yes, I'm one of those that I will repeat and repeat and repeat. I remember one time I was at a store trying to find a price for a bedroom of a bed set. And the guy said it so many times to me that he was just got so irritated that he just walked away. But I was just like, I'm sorry, this is just how I work. You know what I mean? This is how I receive information. I just got to make sure this is right so that when I go back and relay the information that I'm not misinterpreting it, because the telephone game is a real thing. You start with one and then later on throughout the whoever's listening, it's a whole different thing when it comes to the end person. So we really do have to practice and reiterate and make sure that it goes understood what's being said. So for you, when did you realize that your communication needed to improve?
I think the best thing that happens, especially when you work in a corporate environment, is this idea of a performance review. I think we all love them and hate them, and I think sometimes, especially also if you get a chance and be in an environment where they do a 360 assessment, and you might perhaps get some feedback this way, or at a very simple level, if you do send a message or have a conversation, and then you find yourself, to your point, having to go back and repeat the same thing or explain the same thing, then you start to at least do your own self-reflection and say, was I not so clear the first round that I have to do this one more time? So we end up essentially then realizing that, especially also when we observe others, if we do see others applying themselves in a better way, hopefully we exercise a bit more observation skill to notice that, oh my goodness, I am in the presence of somebody who is a much better communicator. Like I notice people who have the skill of paraphrasing. And then I said to myself, oh my goodness, this person is paraphrasing what they heard because they want to make sure that they understood clearly what was being said. And it's another way of letting the other person in the conversation know that they have been heard and heard clearly. Otherwise, if there is a disconnect on what was understood, then we still have a chance to revisit it, reshape it, and clarify it. So one definitely is to ask for feedback whether or not it's a review process, but make sure that you on a regular basis ask people what's working, what's not working, what could be better. So I could really make it from the standpoint of what's working. So it's not necessarily I am speaking about myself, but we're really talking about the whole process of how are we interacting with one another? Are the emails I'm sending you clear enough? Are the documents stuff that you continue to use? Should we revisit any of that so that we can improve our game and make it better?
Yeah, absolutely. I love that because I think that gives people a way to just help themselves, you know what I mean? There's always a way to improve ourselves. There's no one on this earth that's perfect. There's no one on this earth that has every knowledge, every understanding, everything. No, there's no such thing. So if we put ourselves in a position to know that there's always an opportunity to learn and improve and enhance, I think that allows us to be like, okay, well, I could just tweak right here. I can just move this and do this instead of this, or use a certain word differently versus or a certain tone differently so that they can convey, or what I'm trying to convey is actually being understood. So yes, I value that. So for you, in your perspective, what does bad communication look like?
I think it's when you can clearly see that the listening component is not happening. Let's say one side has an agenda, they just want to cover it, and all they care about is whatever it is, whatever business they're trying to to achieve, and that essentially turns the conversation to a very one-sided conversation. So in that case, it's not a conversation; it's just one-sided dialogue. And
Yeah.
that's why it's important always to remind ourselves to, again, remember this idea of curiosity and ask a follow-up question. Because if you do ask a follow-up question, at least it meant that you've listened to that early part of the conversation. And when I'm coaching leaders in corporate settings, a lot of the time they have to also make sure that on the back end of a conversation, there is a recap of what we talked about. There is a revisit to what are the key action items, what is it that we are going to be doing after this meeting. So I think it's important to think about how we start a conversation and also how we end the conversation, just because again, there is so much that we are investing, whether it's our time, the salaries that we are getting, the cost of the project that we're working on. There's always a cost besides just the energy and the time that we are spending.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I love that you touched based on that because people don't realize how much time is so important. You know what I mean? Especially for companies, for corporate settings, your time is everything. You're making a money every minute, every second, depending on what you do or what establishment you're working for. So I think just having that process of just recapping, knowing what key actions are going to be taken place, and any follow up questions to make sure that the clarity is there. I think that's really important, and also just leadership skills as well, because as a good leader, I think just having this communication intelligence and having those steps really makes people feel seen, they feel heard, they feel acknowledged. And to have a great working team, it really does show that. So I guess it leads to my next question. Do you think emotional intelligence also plays a good component in communication intelligence?
Absolutely. I think the fact that you are aware of the fact that every word you say, every question you're asking the other person, at the very least, it's going to send a message whether or not you actually do care. If you do care about what the conversation is, the person that's having a conversation with you, what the outcome is going to be, it's
Mm-hmm.
very interesting. As human beings, we have these amazing sensors. But the
Yes.
other person starts to sense that, oh, so you just want, X, Y, and Z, and you're not really into the conversation. You're not listening. So emotional intelligence is beyond being aware about oneself. It's also being aware of what's going on for the other person. And if you don't have enough of that intelligence, then highly likely it's not going to be a two-sided equation and a
Yeah.
two-sided conversation. So we definitely encourage leaders to, again, ask a few questions, find out, how is this person doing? What's the week been like? Have a little bit of that front end conversation that really shows that you're a human being. Because otherwise, we would be chat GPTing everything.
Yes.
asking and getting the responses. But if we want to get something a lot more than just the knowledge, we want to also get to see what the other person is feeling, what else is going on in the organization. Like I've been in many environments in corporate settings where there's just so much stress and so much fear because people are worried about their jobs, they are worried about the project, whether or not they're doing a good job. So you want to sort of ask some questions to sort of uncover what's underneath the surface because then you can connect. It's like all
Yeah.
of a sudden, this person can feel that I'm stressed. This person can feel that I'm worried. And we can spend a few minutes talking about this, and maybe there's something that we can do about it. Maybe we can reschedule a meeting so we can create a better buffer of energy during the day versus the back-to-back meetings, or allow ourselves time to just take time out and talk about how is this project going? Maybe there is a way that we can redesign some of the things we're doing to take care of the people that are working on the project. Uh,
Yeah.
kind of going back to this idea of if people are rushing to the next thing, emotional intelligence is not in action.
It really isn't, because when you are just focusing on the next thing and the next thing and the next thing, it's like you're not even recognizing what's going on within you. So then
Uh,
you're not even going to recognize what's going in with the other person, because if you
Other
took
person.
that time, like you said, to just breathe and just look and see, you'll be able to see your workers are stressed out. You can see that they're overwhelmed. You can see that they're flustered. And when you see that, then you can be like, okay, why is this happening? Is this a collective thing? Are you guys all feeling like this? What is it? Is it the deadline that needs to get moved? Is it the load? Is it the organization? Is it like you go down all the list, and you make that list, and you make that understanding so that everyone's in that same state of mind, because I think that's what makes a good company, a good leader, a good management, just in good in general. And I also love the fact that you talked about how we're humans, you know what I mean? We're human beings. And human beings, we connect in a way that other things just don't understand. You know what I mean? A robot's not going to understand why we move a certain way, or why we stopped to just look, or you know what I mean? Because sometimes when you just stop to just look and to observe everything, then you're able to see what's not being said. You know what I mean? And I think that's a big thing with emotional intelligence, is that you'll be able to pick up on all of those sensors like you were talking about, that is not being spoken out, but is clearly being seen. Like the eyes are exhausted, the hair is crazy, you know what I mean? The eyes
Yes.
are boggled out. Like there's clear signs that only humans can really understand and really read, because yeah, AI is getting good at understanding and detecting certain things to a certain degree, but it's not going to really understand that heart to heart that only humans can really understand and see. Because sometimes, depending on the person, you can have a whole conversation without saying anything, you know what I mean? All you got to do is just look into somebody's eyes and be like, I got you, I understand you, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? We can move forward, you know what I mean? Like, or watch out for that person, you know what I mean? There's always that something to really bring value into the situation. So I'm sad that time is catching up to us, because I feel like I could keep picking your brain, Ash. Like I am enjoying your perspective. But what can be some lasting words that you can leave us off with to keep on thinking?
I think one of the ideas that I have been sharing with clients is this idea of meeting with self.
Mm,
And the idea of meeting with self just gives us a chance, let's say on a Friday afternoon, to think about the upcoming week and think about how we want to show up. Like if you look next week and Tuesday looks like it's full of meetings, maybe there is a chance for you to change that day. And if you do change the day, you're going to give yourself more energy, more presence. Because I love the idea of when you think about this idea that they talk about on Wall Street, which is the idea of organizational alpha. It's
mm,
how can you get more out of the same number of people? So to your point, Mitzi, if you connect with people and you get them to think about, oh my God, I love working with Mitzi, they will probably go the extra mile. Just think about that, the extra mile, what that would mean in your own business, in your on your own team, the overall productivity, the overall vibe of the whole place, and what that could also do to attracting others to come and work in this place. So, because a lot of those things affect the strategic impact of how everybody's working, what the environment is like, and whether or not we are a team that people would want to join.
Right? I mean, I think that holds so much value because if you are not somebody that understands, you are not somebody that listens, you are not somebody that actually even pays attention, your words don't match your stamina or the what you supposedly represent, it's going to be very obvious. You know what I mean? Like it's going to be obvious if things don't align correctly. And I think just having that moment to yourself, you're able to reconnect to yourself and just be like, okay, I got this, it's going to be okay. We can do this. And you come in a better mood and you present yourself in a better form as well, where people are able to receive you because like we were talking about earlier, we can sense things. So if you come into my show, Ash, and you're flustered, overwhelmed, and exhausted, I'm gonna already pick up and I'm just gonna be like, okay, well, let me hurry it up so that he can just continue on with his day because obviously I'm just gonna disturb his peace. You know what I mean? So we really do catch up on this. So it's like when we are able to come back to ourselves, I think it holds so much value. So I truly appreciate this conversation because it really brings so much value. And ladies and gentlemen, if you guys enjoyed this conversation as much as I did, go check out Ash. I have access to his website that has so much great content so that you can continue on thinking, so that you can continue on wondering, how am I coming up to the world? How am I showing up? Am I conveying what needs to be said in the right way? You know, these are the real questions, and Ash can gladly be able to assist you in that manner so that you can know that you're already doing the right thing, or maybe just need to shift something in a little direction so that you can be exactly where you need to be. So, with that being said, always, always, always keep thinking, y'all. Bye.